The only time my phone lit up with my family's names was when they needed something. Not, "How are you?" Not, "Did you make it home safe?" Not even, "I'm sorry." Just need. And the part that still makes my chest tighten, even now, is that I didn't notice how bad it was until the first time my life actually broke. Because when things were fine, when I was the dependable one with a steady paycheck, the one who could Venmo without checking my balance, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays and sent the thoughtful gifts, my family had a way of making their silence look like normal. Everyone's busy, I told myself. I said it like I was defending them. Like if I said it enough times, it would become true. My name is Rachel Hart. I'm 36 years old and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the kind of woman people describe as solid, the kind you'd want as a neighbor, as a coworker, as a bridesmaid. I plan ahead. I keep receipts. I don't borrow money. I refill the Brita. I used to think being solid was the same thing as being loved. It isn't. Growing up, my parents didn't hit us or scream the way you see in those dramatic stories people tell. We were a good family. Church on Sundays, barbecue on Saturdays, summer vacations at Myrtle Beach every other year if my dad's overtime checks came in. My mom, Linda, liked to tell people she raised strong, independent kids. My dad, Tom, was the quiet type who could fix anything and loved to be admired for it. My older brother, Mark, was the golden boy who could do no wrong. My younger sister, Jenna, was the free spirit who always needed a little help. And then there was me, middle child, the fixer. If Jenna forgot her lunch, I split mine. If Mark needed someone to cover for him, I lied. If my mom forgot to pay something, I found the cash in my sock drawer and handed it to her. By the time I was 12, I could read a room better than I could read a book. I learned how to step around my mom's moods. I learned how to smooth over my dad's pride. I learned how to laugh at the jokes my brother made at my expense so nobody would accuse me of being sensitive. I learned, without anyone ever saying it out loud, that love in our house was something you earned by being useful. The first time I left home for college, UNC Charlotte, because it was far enough to feel like freedom but close enough to drive back for holidays, my mom hugged me at the car and whispered, "Don't forget where you came from." It sounded sweet, like a blessing, but what she meant was, don't forget who will expect you to come running the second you're needed. And I didn't. Even after I got my first job in marketing, even after I moved into my first little apartment with the beige carpet and the loud upstairs neighbor, even after I started building a life that wasn't centered around my family's emergencies, my phone still rang with the same pattern. Mark calling because he forgot his car payment and needed a quick loan. Jenna calling because her roommate turned crazy and she needed help moving out. My mom calling because my dad's truck needed repairs and you know how expensive things are now. I sent money. I made calls. I fixed. And if I ever hesitated, my mom had this way of sounding wounded without raising her voice. Well, I just thought family helps family. So I helped. Because on the rare days I didn't help, my phone didn't ring at all. And silence from them felt like punishment. That was my normal. Until the year my life cracked wide open. It started with exhaustion that didn't make sense. I was working at a mid-sized tech company, the kind with a ping-pong table and inspirational slogans on the wall, and I was doing fine. Not glamorous, not rich, but fine. And then, over a couple of months, fine became this heavy thing I had to drag around. I was tired after sleeping 8 hours. I'd get out of the shower and need to sit down on the edge of the tub like I'd run a mile. My hair started coming out in my brush in a way that made my stomach drop. My boyfriend at the time, Evan, said, "Maybe you're just stressed." He said it like stress was a personality flaw, like I was choosing it. I went to my primary care doctor. then got referred for blood work, then to an endocrinologist. Hypothyroidism, not dramatic, not a movie illness, but enough to wreck you quietly. Medication helped, but it took time. In the meantime, I was moving through my days like I was underwater. Everything felt slower, heavier. And around the same time, our company announced restructuring. You know that corporate word that sounds like furniture being rearranged, but what it really means is you're about to lose people. We got an email, a calendar invite, a meeting with HR, and a manager who couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I remember staring at the little plant on the conference table while they explained my role was being eliminated, and all I could think was, I didn't even have the energy to be scared. They gave me a severance package, small, and a pamphlet about unemployment benefits. When I walked out with my box of desk stuff, the sun was too bright. People kept typing at their computers like nothing happened. My badge stopped working at the door. I sat in my car and tried to breathe. And then, because my body is apparently wired to worry about everyone else before it worries about itself, the first thought I had was, I can't tell my family. Not because they'd comfort me, because they'd need something. It took me 3 days to tell my mom. 3 days of staring at job boards and feeling my throat tighten every time I saw competitive salary, like the words were mocking me. 3 days of calculating how long my savings would last and realizing the number was smaller than it should have been because I'd been funding other people's chaos for years. On the 4th day, I called my mom while I was sitting on my couch, with a blanket around my shoulders like I was 80. She answered on the second ring, and before I could speak, she said, Rachel, I can't talk long. Your father's in the garage and Jenna's acting dramatic again. What's up? No. Hi. No warmth. Just a time limit. I swallowed. I got laid off. There was a pause. Then, oh, well, that's unfortunate. Unfortunate. Like I spilled coffee. I'm also dealing with a thyroid issue, I added. Because maybe, this would trigger something human in her. Another pause, shorter this time. Well, you're young. You'll bounce back. And then, without even a breath between topics. Listen, since you're not working right now, can you drive down this weekend and help your dad clean out the shed? He's been saying he needs an extra set of hands. I actually laughed. It came out weird and sharp. Mom, I'm not on vacation. I'm trying to find a job. She sighed like I was being difficult. Okay. Don't get snippy. I'm just saying it'd be nice if you were around more. You're always so busy. I stared at my living room wall where the paint was slightly scuffed near the corner from the day I moved in. I could feel something in me, small but real, starting to pull away. Did Mark know I got laid off? I asked. Why would he know? She snapped. Mark has his own life. I almost said, and I don't, but I didn't. I said, okay. And then she hit me with the one sentence that made my throat close. Just don't come asking us for money, Rachel. We're barely keeping up as it is. I blinked hard. I wasn't. You know how things are, she continued, talking over me. Your father's hours got cut last month, and Jenna is, well, Jenna. We can't be carrying you, too. Carrying me. I had been carrying them for years. I ended the call early because my voice was shaking, and I didn't trust myself not to say something I couldn't take back. When I hung up, my phone sat on my lap like a heavy brick, and then I waited for someone else to reach out. Mark didn't text. Jenna didn't call. My dad didn't even send one of his awkward, you'll be fine kiddo messages. Nothing. The silence wasn't even loud at first. It was just absence. Like the moment you realize a room is colder than it should be because someone opened a window a long time ago and never closed it. Weeks passed. I applied to jobs until my laptop fan sounded like it wanted to die. I tailored resumes. I wrote cover letters. I sat through interviews where people asked me to describe a time I overcame a challenge, and I had to smile while my hands shook under the desk. My medication dosage adjusted slowly. Some days I felt almost like myself. Other days I woke up with my bones aching like I'd been hit by a truck. And my family, they were ghosts. Except when they needed something. One morning, about a month after the layoff, my brother called. I stared at the screen like it might explode. "Hey," he said, casual. Too casual. "You busy? Busy doing what? Trying not to fall apart?" "No," I said carefully. "Cool. So listen, I've got a thing. Short term. Like a couple grand." "A couple grand." I looked around my apartment. The grocery list on the counter. The unemployment paperwork. The little bottle of thyroid meds near my coffee maker. "Mark, I'm not working," I said. He scoffed like that was irrelevant. "Yeah, but you always have savings, and I'll pay you back. I just need it for what?" I asked. There was a pause, a shuffle. "It doesn't matter. It's personal." I almost laughed again. Personal. Like my health wasn't personal. Like my job loss wasn't personal. "No," I said. "What?" he snapped. And there it was. The real Mark. Not the charming big brother people saw at family gatherings. The one who always believed I existed to cushion his life. I said no, I repeated slowly. He exhaled hard. "Rachel, seriously? I wouldn't ask if I didn't need it." I felt my pulse in my throat. "Did you ask how I'm doing?" "What?" "Did you ask how I'm doing?" I said again, and my voice was steadier than I expected. "Because you didn't. You called and immediately asked if I was busy, and then you asked for money." He went quiet for a beat. Then, in this annoyed tone, "Okay, fine. How are you?" It was so fake it made my stomach twist. "I'm not great," I said. "And I don't have extra money right now." His voice sharpened. "Wow, so you're just going to let your brother drown?" I stared at the ceiling. "Mark, I'm drowning." "Whatever," he muttered. "I'll figure it out. Thanks for nothing." Click. The call ended like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I sat there for a long time after. Not crying, not moving, just realizing. Realizing that my family didn't go quiet because they didn't know. They didn't go quiet because they were overwhelmed. They went quiet because my pain didn't benefit them. And that was a truth I couldn't unlearn. The worst part came 2 months after the layoff, when I got sick. Not cold, sick. Real sick. It started as a fever and a sore throat. Then it hit my chest. I couldn't take a full breath without coughing. My head felt like it was filled with wet cotton. I went to urgent care. The doctor listened to my lungs, ordered a chest x-ray, and told me I had pneumonia. Pneumonia. I remember sitting in my car afterward, clutching the paper prescription, thinking, this is the moment. This is the moment where family shows up. Because that's what we're taught, right? That family might be messy, but when it's serious, they come through. I texted my mom. "Urgent care says I have pneumonia. I'm scared. Can you call me?" I watched the 3 dots appear, then disappear. Minutes went by. Finally, she texted back. "Take your medicine. Drink fluids. We can't catch that. Rest." No call. I texted Mark. "Hey, I'm sick. Pneumonia, just letting you know." No response. I texted Jenna. "Can you check in on me? I'm really sick." She replied 2 hours later. "OMG, that sucks. I'm at my friend's. Feel better." That was it. I lay in bed for days, sweating through my sheets, waking up coughing so hard my ribs hurt. I made soup from a can and ate it slowly like it was a chore. I carried my laundry basket to the washing machine in the building basement and had to stop halfway down the stairs to breathe. I didn't want to tell anyone how scared I was, because there was no one to tell. And something in me changed in that silence. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't like a movie where you suddenly become a different person. It was quieter than that, like a door in your mind closing. I started keeping track. Not in a petty way, in a factual way. Date I got laid off? No calls. Date I got diagnosed? No calls. Date I got pneumonia? No calls. But you know what did happen? On the second week of pneumonia, my mom texted me, "Your Aunt Carol's birthday is next week. Are you sending a gift or should I put your name on ours?" I stared at the message until my eyes burned. Then I typed, "I'm not sending anything." She replied, "Don't embarrass us." Embarrass us. Like my job loss and illness were an inconvenience to their image. I didn't respond. I turned my phone on silent and let it sit face down. That was the beginning of my decision, even if I didn't know it yet. Because after pneumonia, after my lungs stopped feeling like paper, after my thyroid medication finally stabilized, after I got to a point where I could walk upstairs without seeing stars, I looked at my life and realized something that should have been obvious. I was trying to rebuild with one hand tied behind my back. Because even when my family wasn't contacting me, I was still emotionally attached to them. Still hoping they would suddenly see me. Still waiting for a version of love they'd never shown. So I stopped waiting. I got serious in a way I'd never been before. I treated job hunting like a job. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. I walked around my neighborhood to get sunlight and reset my body. I made coffee at home instead of buying it. I tracked every dollar. And I did something that felt both terrifying and empowering. I stopped sending money. Even the small things. No more helping Jenna with her rent gap. No more covering my mom's unexpected expense. No more, just this once for Mark. I didn't announce it. I just stopped. The first time my mom asked, it was in the form of a casual phone call, like she was ordering something off a menu. "Rachel, can you send $300? Your father's truck needs a part." I said, "No." Silence. Then, "No? No," I repeated. She lowered her voice like she was trying to be reasonable. "Honey, it's just 300. You can't do 300? I felt my heart speed up, but my voice stayed calm. "I'm not working yet. I'm not sending money." She made this sound, half sigh, half disgust. "So what? You're just going to let us struggle?" I almost said, "You didn't even ask if I was alive during pneumonia." But I didn't. I said, "You'll figure it out." And I hung up. That was the first boundary. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt nauseating. My hands shook afterward. I paced my apartment like I'd done something illegal. But then, nothing bad happened. The world didn't end. I didn't get struck by lightning for saying no. And that gave me more courage than any motivational quote ever could. I started setting boundaries in other ways too. I stopped answering calls immediately. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped apologizing for existing. And the more I did that, the quieter my life became, in a good way. By late fall, after months of applications and interviews and rejection emails that started to blur together, I landed a job. Not my dream job. Something better. A stable job. Marketing manager at a healthcare company with actual benefits. A boss who was blunt but fair. A salary that wasn't mind-blowing but was enough to breathe again. When I signed the offer letter, I didn't call my mom. I didn't call anyone in my family. I sat in my apartment with a bowl of microwave popcorn and I cried. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in my life, I felt proud of myself without needing anyone else to witness it. I rebuilt. Slowly, carefully. I paid down the credit card balance that had crept up during unemployment. I built my savings back up. I started cooking real meals again. I joined a gym that had a women's strength training class, and it felt like reclaiming my body after months of being betrayed by it. I made friends at work, real friends, not just work friends, people who asked how I was and waited for the answer, people who didn't call only when they needed something. I started going to a Saturday farmer's market and buying ridiculous little bouquets of flowers for my kitchen table, because I could. I took myself on a weekend trip to Asheville in the spring. Just me, a small cabin, hiking trails, a book I'd been meaning to read. No family drama, no guilt. I remember sitting on a porch with coffee, watching the trees move in the wind and feeling something unfamiliar. Peace. It wasn't loud. It didn't burst through the door. It just settled. And as my peace grew, my family grew more distant, which should have been sad. But honestly, it felt like detox. For almost a year, we barely talked. I saw them at Christmas because I wasn't ready to skip it entirely yet, and it was fine, superficial. My mom asked what I was doing for work, then immediately talked over me to complain about the price of groceries. Jenna showed up late, scrolled on her phone through dinner, and asked if I'd heard about crypto. Mark bragged about a promotion he didn't actually have, then teased me for ordering sparkling water instead of wine. No one asked about pneumonia. No one asked about the layoff. No one asked about the nights I lay awake terrified and alone. It was like that year of my life didn't exist because it wasn't useful to them. I drove home that night and decided something quietly, without ceremony. I was done trying to make them different. I wasn't going to beg my family to love me correctly. If they couldn't reach for me when I was at my lowest, they didn't get to grab me when I was rising. And then, right on schedule, like they could smell stability the way sharks smell blood, they came back. It started with a phone call from Jenna. I was at work, in the middle of writing an email, when her name popped up. I didn't answer. She immediately texted, "Call me ASAP, it's important." My stomach did that old reflexive drop, like I was about to be pulled into something. I waited until lunch. Then I called her back while sitting in my car. "Hey," I said. She answered with fake brightness. "Rach? Oh my God. Hi. It's been forever." "It has," I said, and didn't fill the silence. She laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, well, life. So listen, I need to talk to you about something." There it was. "What is it?" I asked. She launched into it like she'd rehearsed. "I'm thinking of moving," she said. "Like a real move, fresh start. And I found this apartment that's perfect, but they want first month, last month, deposit." "No," I said, before she could even finish. She stopped. "Wait, what?" "No," I repeated. "I'm not paying for that." Jenna's voice changed instantly, like a switch flipped. "Rachel, I'm not asking you to pay for my life. It's just help. You know I'd do it for you." I almost laughed. "No, you wouldn't." "What's that supposed to mean?" she snapped. "It means when I was unemployed and sick, you didn't even check on me," I said, calm but firm. "So don't pretend you'd do anything for me." She went quiet for a moment, then said defensive, "I didn't know it was that bad." I felt my jaw tighten. "I told you I had pneumonia. You said you were sick. People get sick," she said, like I was exaggerating. The old version of me would have tried to explain, would have tried to make her understand, would have apologized for sounding harsh, but I wasn't that version anymore. "I'm not sending money," I said, "and I'm not discussing it." Jenna's tone turned bitter. "Wow, you really changed." "Yes," I said simply. "I did." And then I hung up. My hands didn't shake afterward. That's how I knew it was real. 2 days later, my mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that sounded like she was reading from a script. Rachel, call me back. This is ridiculous. We need to talk. Need, not want. I called her back that evening while making dinner. She answered immediately. Finally, "Hi, Mom," I said. She didn't say hi back. "What's going on with you? Jenna says you were rude to her." I stirred my pasta sauce slowly. She asked me for money. I said no. "You could have said it nicer," my mom snapped. "Could she have asked how I was doing first?" I asked. My mom scoffed. "Oh my God, are we still on this? You're always so dramatic." I turned the heat down. "No, Mom, I'm not dramatic. I'm done." There was a pause that felt heavy. "Done with what?" "With being the one you call when you need something," I said. "You weren't there when I was struggling. You weren't there when I was sick. You didn't check on me. You didn't ask. You went silent." My mom's voice went tight. "We had our own problems." "So did I," I said. "You always make everything about you," she snapped. I actually smiled, but it wasn't happy. It was the smile you get when you finally see something clearly. "Mom," I said, "for most of my life, everything has been about you, about Mark, about Jenna. I made myself small so you could all stay comfortable." Silence. Then she shifted tactics. "Well, I'm sorry you felt that way." Felt. Not, "I'm sorry." Just sorry about my feelings, like they were inconvenient. I nodded to myself. "Okay." She cleared her throat. "So, anyway, since you're doing better now." There it was again. "Mom," I warned softly. She ignored it. "Your father and I have been thinking. It would be fair if you helped us out a little. We've done a lot for you." I nearly dropped the spoon. "You've done a lot for me," I repeated. "Yes," she said, like it was obvious. "We raised you. We supported you." I let the silence stretch, because if I spoke too quickly, I would say something sharp. Then I said, "How much are you asking for?" My mom hesitated, like she was negotiating. "Well, not asking, just, you know, family contribution. You're making good money now. We're not getting younger." "How much?" I asked again. She exhaled. "Maybe 1,000 a month." I stared at my stove. 1,000 a month. $1,000 every month. To people who didn't call me when I couldn't breathe. "Absolutely not," I said. My mom's voice rose. "Rachel, do you hear yourself?" "Yes," I said, calm. "I hear myself." "We're your parents," she shouted. "And I was your daughter," I said quietly. "When I was sick, you texted me drink fluids and didn't call. When I was unemployed, you told me not to ask you for money. You don't get to rewrite history now that I'm stable." My mom's breathing sounded sharp. "So you're punishing us?" "No," I said. "I'm protecting myself." My mom started crying then, sudden, dramatic, like a siren. "I can't believe this," she sobbed. "After everything we've done, you're turning your back on us. You've become cold." I let her cry. That might sound cruel, but it wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. I wasn't responsible for her emotions anymore. "I'm not cold," I said. "I'm finally honest." Then she did the thing she always did when she was losing control. She brought up the family storyline, the one that made me sound like the villain. "Mark said you've been bragging," she sniffed, "posting about your trips and your promotions like you're better than us." I frowned. "I haven't posted anything about my salary, Mom." "But people talk," she insisted. "And if you can afford vacations, you can afford to help your family." There it was. My success was only valuable if it could be harvested. I took a breath. "Mom, listen carefully. My finances are not a family resource. I'm not discussing money with you, Mark, or Jenna ever again." She gasped. "Excuse me?" "I'm setting a boundary," I said. "If you call me for money, I'll end the call. If you guilt me, I'll take space. Her voice turned icy. So you're threatening your mother? No, I said. I'm informing you. She went quiet, and in that quiet, I could almost hear her calculating a different approach, because my mom was a master of switching masks. Finally, she said softer, Rachel, honey, we just miss you. I closed my eyes. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to believe it. But missing me didn't look like asking if I was okay during pneumonia. Missing me didn't look like silence for a year until they smelled money again. If you miss me, I said, call to talk. Call to ask how I'm doing. Call because you want to be in my life, not because you want a piece of it. She didn't answer, and that was my answer. After that call, the next weeks were messy. Mark called 3 times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that were a mix of anger and entitlement. Rachel, you're being ridiculous. Mom's upset and you need to fix it. Don't forget who was there for you growing up. There it was again. Rewrite history, demand access. I didn't respond. Then came the group text. Mom, we need to meet as a family. Mark, yeah, this is getting out of hand. Jenna, can we just talk like adults? I stared at my phone and felt the old familiar pressure trying to clamp around my ribs. Meet as a family. In my family, that meant everyone lines up and tells Rachel what she did wrong. And the craziest part? A small part of me still wanted to go, still wanted to be forgiven, still wanted them to suddenly realize I mattered. But that part of me was older now, wiser, and she was tired. I typed one message. I'm not meeting. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with respect. No money requests, no guilt. If you can't do that, we won't talk. Then I muted the thread. The messages kept coming for hours, bubbling on my screen like a pot boiling over. Wow. So you're just cutting us off? Fine, do whatever. You think you're so special now. I didn't answer. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was putting something down. But the real breaking point, the moment my family showed their hand completely, came at my cousin's wedding. Not a big fancy celebrity wedding, a normal southern wedding at a vineyard outside Charlotte, with string lights and mason jars and a DJ who played Yeah by Usher, like it was a religious requirement. I almost didn't go, but my cousin Natalie had always been kind to me, and I wanted to show up for her. I told myself, go, smile, be polite, leave early if you need to. I went alone. No boyfriend this time. Evan and I had broken up during my unemployment, mostly because he couldn't handle the idea that I wasn't fun when I was struggling. Funny how some people disappear when you stop being convenient. When I arrived at the vineyard, the air smelled like grass and perfume and barbecue smoke drifting from the catering area. People were laughing, taking photos, clinking glasses. And then I saw them. My mom, my dad, Mark, Jenna, standing together like they'd been rehearsing the image of a united family. My mom spotted me first. Her face tightened for half a second. Then she put on her public smile and walked toward me with arms open. Rachel, she said, loud enough for people to hear. There you are. I let her hug me, but my body stayed stiff. Hi, Mom, I said. She stepped back and held my arms like she was proud. Look at you. You look healthy? Healthy. Like I had been some fragile plant that finally stopped wilting. Thanks, I said. Mark came up next, hands in pockets, grin that didn't reach his eyes. Hey, sis. Nice to see you. Jenna looked me up and down like she was evaluating my outfit. Cute dress. I nodded. Hi. My dad stood behind them, quiet as always, and gave me a small, awkward wave. Hey, kiddo. That was it. That was all I got from the man who helped raise me. No apology, no acknowledgement, just, Hey. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by music and laughter, and I could feel the tension under my skin. My family wasn't here for Natalie's wedding. They were here because this was public. Because in public, they could play the part. My mom leaned closer, voice sweet. We should talk later, just us. I kept my expression neutral. Maybe. She smiled like that was a yes. The ceremony started. We sat in rows of white chairs facing a little wooden arch wrapped in flowers. Natalie walked down the aisle and looked radiant, and for a few minutes I let myself get lost in something that wasn't my family's chaos. But then, during cocktail hour, it began. My mom cornered me near the bar while I was holding a sparkling water. "Rachel," she said, soft, "can we sit?" There was a little patio area with string lights and fire pits. I followed her to a table, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to see what she would do. I wanted confirmation that my instincts weren't paranoia. She sat and clasped her hands like she was about to have a heartfelt conversation. "I've been thinking," she began. I waited. "I know we've had misunderstandings," she said carefully. "Misunderstandings." I didn't respond. She continued, "But you're doing well now, and I'm proud of you. We all are." I stared at her. "You haven't asked me anything about my life." Her smile flickered. "Well, I'm asking now." I let out a slow breath. "Okay, what do you want to know?" She paused, like she wasn't prepared for that to be real. Then she said, "How much do you make now?" There it was. I actually laughed, a short sound I couldn't stop. "Are you serious?" My mom's face tightened. "Rachel, don't be like that. It's just a question." "No," I said. "It's not. It's a calculation." She sat back, offended. "You're being unfair." "Am I?" I asked, quiet but firm. "Because when I was unemployed, you told me not to ask you for money. When I was sick, you didn't call. You didn't ask how I was doing. And now the first thing you want to know is my salary." Her eyes flashed. "You're holding a grudge." "I'm holding a boundary," I corrected. She sighed dramatically and leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was about to share a secret. "Rachel, your father and I are struggling," she said. "And Mark has been having a hard time too." I glanced across the lawn where Mark was laughing with someone, drink in hand, looking perfectly fine. "Hard time?" I asked. My mom nodded solemnly. "He's between opportunities." That meant he messed something up again. "And Jenna," she continued, "she's trying, but you know how it is. Life is expensive." I stared at my mom. "So what is this, Mom?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "This whole conversation," I said. "You didn't come to reconnect. You came to collect." Her face hardened. "Rachel, do you hear yourself? We're family." I held her gaze. "Yes, we are. And family doesn't disappear when someone is sick." Her mouth opened, then closed. Then she went for the kill shot, the thing she thought would shame me into obedience. "People are noticing," she said, voice sharp. "People are talking about how you've changed, about how you're stingy now." Stingy. That word hit like a slap, because it was the same word my mom used when she wanted to make generosity feel like an obligation. I sat very still. "Who's talking?" She glanced around like she was trying to make me feel watched. "Everyone." I nodded slowly. "Okay." She leaned in. "Rachel, don't do this here. Not at Natalie's wedding." I looked at her and felt something settle in my chest like a weight dropping into place. She wasn't worried about Natalie. She was worried about being seen. I stood up. My mom's eyes widened. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to enjoy the wedding," I said. "And I'm going to make this clear so you stop trying." She grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but enough to show ownership. Rachel, she hissed. Sit down. I gently removed her hand. Don't touch me. That was the first time in my life I'd said that to my mother. Her face went pale with shock and anger. I walked away. And of course, she followed, because my mom didn't know how to lose quietly. We ended up near the dessert table where people were lining up for cupcakes and little mini pies. Natalie's college friends were laughing nearby, and an aunt I barely knew was taking photos. My mom stepped closer to me and said, loud enough for people to hear, "You're really going to act like you're above us now?" My stomach dropped, but I kept my face calm. "I'm not above you," I said. "I'm just not funding you." Heads turned. I could feel it, the way people pretend not to listen while listening harder. My mom's eyes flashed. "We're not asking you to fund us. We're asking you to share. Like family." Mark appeared then, like he'd been waiting for his cue. "Rachel," he said, voice already annoyed. "What's going on?" My mom immediately played victim. "She's being cold again. She's embarrassing us." Mark turned to me, jaw tight. "Why are you doing this here?" I looked at him. "Why are you?" He blinked. "What?" "You didn't check on me when I was sick," I said, voice steady. "You called me for money when I was unemployed. And now you're here at a wedding acting like you're entitled to my life." Mark's face reddened. "That's not fair." Jenna slid in too, eyes bright with the kind of energy people get when drama is happening and they aren't the target. "Oh my God," she muttered, like I was the one causing a scene. I looked at all of them, my mother, my brother, my sister, standing in front of me like a panel of judges. And in that moment, something clicked so cleanly it almost felt peaceful. They were never going to understand me. They weren't built to. Because understanding me would require admitting what they did, and they would rather call me cold than face their own emptiness. I lifted my chin. "Let me say this once," I said, not yelling, just clear. When I was sick, none of you called. When I was laid off, none of you asked if I was okay. And when I rebuilt my life, you showed up to ask what you could get. That's not family. That's a subscription service. Someone nearby let out a surprised laugh, quickly covering it with a cough. My mom's face went crimson. "How dare you?" Mark hissed, "Rachel, stop. You're making a scene." I gestured lightly around us. "No, you're making a scene. I'm just finally speaking out loud." Jenna scoffed. "So what? You're cutting us off?" I looked at her. "I'm cutting off access to my money, yes. And if you keep trying to guilt me, I'll cut off access to me too." My mom's voice trembled with rage. "You owe us. You owe your parents. We raised you." I held her gaze and said the sentence that made everything stop. "You raised me to be useful," I said. "Not loved. And I'm done being useful." The air felt different after that, like the temperature dropped. My dad, who had been silent this whole time, stepped forward finally, eyes wide like he didn't recognize the moment he'd helped create. "Rachel," he said quietly, "that's not true." I looked at him. He had stood by for years while my mom controlled the emotional climate of our home. He had watched Mark take and take. He had watched Jenna coast through consequences that I cleaned up. And he was going to tell me it wasn't true? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "Then why didn't you call me when I couldn't breathe?" My dad opened his mouth. No words came out. And that silence, his silence, answered everything. My mom stepped forward, voice sharp and shaking. "Fine," she snapped. "If you want to be selfish, be selfish." I nodded once. "Okay," Mark muttered under his breath. "Unbelievable." Jenna rolled her eyes. "This is so dramatic." And then they walked away, back into the crowd, back into their performance. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding, hands steady. and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. That night, after the wedding, my phone lit up with messages. From my mom, "You humiliated us." From Mark, "You owe Mom an apology." From Jenna, "Hope you're happy. You ruined the vibe." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my notes app and wrote something simple. Rules. No family member would have access to my finances. No family member would have access to my health information. No family member would have access to my home without invitation. Any conversation that turned into guilt would end immediately. I didn't write them because I needed to remember. I wrote them because I needed to believe I was allowed. The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I made my boundaries real on paper. I updated my emergency contact at work. From my mom to my best friend Tasha, a woman who had brought me soup during pneumonia even though she was busy with her own life. I updated my beneficiary information. I changed my locks, not because I thought my family would break in, but because for once I wanted my space to feel like mine. And I started therapy, not because I was broken, because I was tired of carrying the story my family wrote for me. In therapy, I learned something that hit me harder than any insult my mom ever threw at me. I had been raised to confuse guilt with love. Guilt was the glue that kept me in my role. And once I stopped letting guilt be the leash, my family didn't know how to hold on to me. So they tried harder. They escalated. My mom showed up at my apartment one Saturday without warning. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there with a tote bag, like she was coming over for a casual visit. I didn't open the door. She knocked again. Harder. "Rachel," she called. "I know you're in there." I didn't move. My phone buzzed. A text from her. "Open the door. We need to talk." Need. Always need. I texted back. "I'm not available. Please leave." She started knocking again, loud enough that my neighbor's door cracked open down the hall. I took a breath, opened the door just enough to step into the hallway, and closed it behind me so she couldn't see inside. My mom's eyes flared. "Really? You won't even let me in?" "No," I said. She lifted her tote bag like it was proof of her goodness. "I brought you things, groceries, since you always say we don't help." I looked at the bag and felt a strange sadness because she really thought this was what love looked like. A prop, a bargaining chip. "I didn't ask for groceries," I said. She pushed. "You need to stop acting like we abandoned you. We were busy." I nodded. "Okay." My mom's eyebrows knit. "Okay? That's all you have to say?" "Yes," I said. "Because I'm not arguing about the past anymore." She stepped closer, voice sharpening. "Rachel, this isn't you. This isn't who you are." I held her gaze. Who I am is someone who deserves to be checked on when she's sick. Who deserves to be cared about even when she's not useful. My mom's eyes flashed. "We care." I tilted my head. "Then why do you keep talking about money?" Her jaw clenched. "Because you're being stubborn." I felt my pulse steady in my throat. "Mom, leave. If you want a relationship with me, we can talk on the phone next week for 10 minutes about normal things. No money, no guilt. If you can't do that, we won't talk." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. And then she did what she always did when she couldn't control me. She cried. Not quiet tears. Loud, messy tears, meant to shame me in public. "I can't believe my own daughter is treating me like a stranger," she sobbed. My neighbor across the hall fully opened her door then, peeking out. My mom noticed. Of course she did. She looked straight at my neighbor and said dramatically, "I just don't know what happened to her." The old me would have rushed to comfort her, would have apologized, would have tried to make it look normal. But I wasn't old me. I looked at my neighbor and gave a small nod. Then I looked back at my mom and said softly, "Please leave." My mom's tears stopped instantly, like a faucet turning off. Her eyes turned hard. "Fine," she hissed. "If you want to be alone, be alone." She shoved the tote bag into my arms like it was punishment and walked down the hallway. I carried the bag inside and set it on my kitchen counter. And then I did something that surprised even me. I donated most of it. Not because I didn't need groceries, but because I refused to let her use them as evidence. I chose my own support system now. A month after that, Mark tried a different tactic. He texted me a photo of our childhood house. "Mom's heartbroken. Dad's stressed. You're tearing this family apart." I stared at the message and felt the old guilt try to crawl up my spine. Then I typed back one sentence. "I didn't tear it apart. I stopped pretending it was whole." He didn't respond, but he didn't stop. A few weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Rachel?" a woman's voice said. "Hi, this is Donna. I'm a friend of your mom's." My stomach tightened. A proxy call. Of course. "Hi," I said cautiously. Donna continued. Voice syrupy. "Your mom is just so worried about you. She says you've been isolating and she's scared you're depressed." I nearly laughed. Depressed? No. I was finally breathing. "I'm fine," I said, "and I'm not discussing my relationship with my mother with her friends." Donna went silent. Then, "I just think family is everything." I kept my voice calm. Family is not everything if it costs you yourself. And I hung up. After that, I blocked Donna's number. Because that's what boundaries are. Not speeches, not dramatic confrontations, but quiet actions repeated consistently until people learn you mean it. And slowly, my family learned. Not because they understood, but because they realized I wasn't budging. Months passed. My life kept growing. I got another raise. I started mentoring a younger woman at work who reminded me of myself. Overly responsible, always apologizing. I started saying no in meetings without a tremble in my voice. I spent Thanksgiving with friends instead of my family. We made a potluck. Someone burned the rolls. Someone forgot the cranberry sauce. Someone's dog stole a piece of turkey off the counter. And it was the happiest Thanksgiving I could remember. Because nobody demanded anything. Nobody made love conditional. I started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. Not looking for someone to fill a hole, but looking for someone who respected my boundaries. And then, about a year and a half after the layoff, something happened that made my family reappear in full force. I got recognized. Not famous, not viral influencer recognized. But I was featured in a local business magazine, Women Who Are Changing Healthcare Marketing kind of thing. A small profile, a photo of me in a blazer, a quote about rebuilding after setbacks. My coworkers congratulated me. My friends took me out for tacos and margaritas. Tasha hugged me and said, "I'm so proud of you, I could scream." I felt seen. And then my phone lit up with a name I hadn't heard from in almost a year. Mom. I stared at it, my thumb hovering. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to answer just to see what she'd say. I answered. "Hello?" My mom's voice was warm, too warm. "Rachel, hi, honey." My body went still. "Hi," I said. "Oh my gosh," she gushed. "We just saw your article. Look at you. I'm telling everyone that's my daughter." There it was, claiming me when I looked good. I didn't respond. She kept going, voice excited. "Your dad was like, 'That's our girl. We're so proud.' Mark said, 'What do you want, Mom?' I asked, quiet but direct. Her warmth faltered for half a second. Then she laughed lightly. 'What do you mean?' 'I mean,' I said, 'you haven't called me in a year.' And now you're calling because you saw an article. So, what do you want? Silence. Then she said carefully, "We just want to reconnect." I nodded to myself. "Okay, how have you been?" She hesitated. "Oh, you know, same." I waited. She didn't feel it. Then she tried again. "Listen, we've been thinking. Since you're doing so well now." There it was again. And this time, I didn't feel anger. I felt almost pity, because she really could not help herself. "Mom," I said softly, "stop." She bristled. "Stop what?" "Stop turning my success into a family resource," I said. "I'm not sharing my income. I'm not giving monthly money. I'm not funding anyone's life." Her voice sharpened. "Rachel, you're being cruel." "No," I said. "I'm being consistent." She inhaled, and I could hear her pivoting into her favorite weapon, moral superiority. "Family helps family," she said firmly. I said, "Family checks on family." She snapped, "We did check on you." I didn't argue. I didn't list dates. I didn't remind her of pneumonia or unemployment. I just said, "That's not true." Silence again. Then, coldly, "So that's it? You're rich now, and you think you don't need us." I felt something tighten in my chest. Not guilt, but grief. Because that was her final story. The only story she could tolerate. "Mom," I said, voice steady. "I needed you when I wasn't rich. I needed you when I was scared and sick and alone. That's what makes this so sad. You keep showing up after the storm and asking for pieces of the house I rebuilt by myself." My mom's breathing sounded sharp. "You're ungrateful." I paused. Then I said, "If you want a relationship with me, it won't be built on guilt. It will be built on respect. And if you can't do that, I'll hang up." She whispered, "Wow." I waited. She didn't soften. She didn't apologize. Instead, she said, flat and furious, "Fine. We'll remember this." I replied, "I hope you do." And then, because I meant it, I ended the call. My hands were steady when I set the phone down. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was abandoning anyone. I felt like I was choosing myself. That should have been the end. But my family wasn't done. Because once they realized I wasn't going to bend, they tried to break me. They started telling people I was cold, that I'd changed, that I was ashamed of them. I found out because a cousin texted me, "Hey, are you okay? Your mom says you won't talk to them and they're worried." Worried. They were never worried when my lungs were infected. But now, worried was useful as a weapon. I didn't defend myself publicly. I didn't post vague quotes online. I didn't start a war. I did the quiet, adult thing my family never taught me. I told the truth to the people who mattered. To Natalie, I said, "I love you. This isn't about you. But my family only reaches out when they need something, and I'm done being used." Natalie listened. She didn't argue. She just said softly, "I believe you." And that one sentence did more healing than 100 forced family meetings ever could. To my Aunt Carol, yes, the birthday gift aunt, I told her the same. She looked uncomfortable, but she didn't push. To anyone who came at me with guilt, I repeated one line like a mantra: "I'm not discussing my boundaries," because boundaries aren't negotiations. And the more I held firm, the more my family's story about me started to crack. Because you can only call someone selfish for so long before people start noticing you're always the one with your hand out. The final attempt, what I now think of as their last big grab, came on a random Tuesday. I was leaving work when I saw a notification, a voicemail from my dad. My dad almost never left voicemails. My chest tightened. I listened in my car. His voice was quiet, strained. "Rachel, it's Dad. Call me, please. No guilt, no anger, just please. For a moment, the little kid in me surged forward, ready to run, ready to fix. I called him back. He answered on the first ring. "Rachel." "Dad," I said. "What's going on?" He hesitated. Then he said, "Your mom. She's been really upset." I waited. He exhaled. "Mark's in trouble." "Of course. What kind of trouble?" I asked. My dad's voice dropped. "Debt. Bad debt. And he put some things in our name." My stomach turned. "In your name?" I repeated. My dad sounded ashamed. "We didn't know. Your mom didn't know." I gripped my steering wheel. "How bad?" He swallowed. "They're talking about legal stuff. Legal stuff. The kind of stuff that could destroy people's lives." And in that moment, I understood exactly why my dad was calling me. Not because he missed me. Because he wanted me to fix it. "Rachel," he said, voice breaking slightly. "Your mom thinks you might help. Just this once. Just to get him out of the hole." I stared through my windshield at the parking lot lights. I could have screamed. I could have cried. But what I felt most was exhaustion. "Dad," I said quietly, "did you call me when I had pneumonia?" Silence. I continued. "Did you call me when I got laid off?" Silence again. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "You're calling me now because Mark did something reckless and you want me to clean it up." My dad whispered, "Rachel." I swallowed. "No." His voice cracked. "He's your brother. And I was your daughter," I said softly. "And I did not matter when I was in pain." My dad's breathing sounded shaky. "So you're really going to let him—" "I'm going to let him face the consequences of his choices," I said. "And I'm going to let you handle this as his parents, because you're the ones who kept protecting him." My dad whispered, "Your mom will never forgive you." I felt a strange calm settle over me, like the final piece clicking into place. "She never forgave me for not being useful," I said. "So I'm not afraid of that anymore." Then I added, gently but firmly, "Dad, I love you. But if you call me again to ask for money or rescue, I won't answer." He didn't speak for a long time. Finally he said, barely audible, "Okay." And when I ended the call, I sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, breathing. My chest hurt, not with guilt, but with grief. Because part of me had always hoped my dad would choose me, but he didn't. He chose peace with my mom. He chose the family story. He chose the path of least resistance. And for the first time, I accepted it fully. That acceptance wasn't bitterness, it was release. Over the next months, my family's messages slowed. They tested the boundary once or twice. Mark tried to call from a different number. Jenna sent a dramatic text about family loyalty, but I didn't respond. And the silence that used to feel like punishment, now it felt like space to build. I poured that space into my life. I took a certification course that boosted my skills. I joined a volunteer program mentoring girls in high school who wanted careers in marketing and healthcare. I hosted Sunday dinners in my apartment with friends who brought wine and laughed loudly and never asked me for money. I started dating a man named Caleb who didn't flinch when I said, "I have boundaries with my family." He just said, "Good, I'm glad you protect yourself." One night, sitting on my couch with Caleb's hand in mine and Tasha's laughter floating from the kitchen as she washed dishes like she lived here, I realized something that made my eyes sting. This is what family is supposed to feel like. Not obligation, not guilt, not transactions. Care. And the biggest reward wasn't money or success or proving my family wrong. It was peace that didn't depend on their approval. Do I still feel sad sometimes? Yes, because there's a special kind of grief in realizing the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally only loved you when you were useful. But sadness doesn't mean my boundary is wrong. Sadness just means I'm human. The last time I heard anything major, it wasn't from them. It was from Natalie, months later, casually over coffee. "Your mom's been telling people you're distant," she said carefully. "But people aren't buying it anymore." I looked down at my cup, then back up. "What do you mean?" Natalie shrugged. "Because she keeps asking everyone for favors. Money. Help. And when people say no, she gets mad. So, they're starting to see the pattern." I felt my throat tighten. Not satisfaction. Relief. Because I hadn't made myself the villain. I hadn't attacked. I hadn't dragged anyone publicly. I just stopped bleeding for people who refused to bandage me. And eventually, people noticed. That's the funny thing about boundaries. When you stop absorbing everyone else's mess, they call you selfish at first. But over time, the people who actually have a conscience start realizing you weren't selfish. You were just done being exploited. Now, when my phone is quiet, I don't feel punished. I feel safe. I have a life that's mine. A bank account that isn't a family emergency fund. A body I care for. A mind I protect. A home that feels like a sanctuary. And if my family ever comes back, not to collect, not to guilt, not to perform, but to genuinely repair, then maybe there's a path. But it won't be a path paved by my sacrifice. It will be paved by their accountability. Until then, my boundary stays where it is. Firm, quiet, and non-negotiable. Because I didn't rebuild my life just to hand it back to the people who watched it collapse and looked away. I rebuilt it so I could finally live in it. And if there's one message I wish someone had told me years ago, it's this: you are not a bad daughter for protecting your peace. You are not selfish for refusing to be someone's emergency plan. And you don't owe anyone access to the life you fought to build. You owe yourself the chance to enjoy it.